Alrighty, Taha, welcome to the show. Good to have you, man.
Hey,
How you
thanks for
doing?
having me. I'm doing well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Big Hyperliquid Bull here. Founder of Paragon, one of the HIP3 deployers, trading across different asset classes, indices, and more. Obviously, we're big Hyperliquid Bulls on the show. Been in the ecosystem for quite a long time, early buyers, 2024, and just been excited about what's happening here. What's your Hyperliquid story, Taha? How did you get involved? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been around the crypto space for some time now. Like a lot of folks, started in TradFi, made my way to Solana, um, ran a product studio for some time, focusing on validators and Oracle infra. But yeah, I'm an early tinker on most products, so found my way to Hyperliquid around 2024 or so. I think what really attracted me to Hyperliquid was, the builder experience. As someone who likes to be on the front lines of product thinking in crypto, Hyperliquid really just presented the best opportunity, the best foundation, the most SaaS-like experience in terms of like the grab and go infra that exists off the shelf on Hyperliquid to really build something like Paragon. Um, and yeah, I think like, amazing community, amazing product and founder, led team. That's for me, it was almost like a vendor management decision that brought me to Hyperliquid.
Yeah, man, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think builder codes kind of changed the entire way that people think about, operating in finance and doing, uh, you know, being able to scale the liquidity layer. Like honestly, I think people are gonna start to think about Hyperliquid and probably already are as just this like underpinning of a lot of successful front ends. Like the Hyperliquid front end itself is obviously great. People use it, people trade on it a lot. But I think that there's going to be this kind of push away into maybe one day the similar to what Robinhood and Lighter have done. Maybe Hyperliquid powers the CME future or something big like that.
Yeah,
When it
or
Yeah,
replaces it altogether, right? I think that's what excites me as well
yeah,
is this idea that people talk about it all the time that the future kind of looks like hyperliquid rails without really knowing you're trading on hyperliquid, and I think that we very much intend for Paragon to be a part of making that a reality.
yeah, most definitely. So talk to us about the Paragon story a bit. How did it come about? What is the kind of main focus for Paragon, and kind of how do you think about the deployer space?
Yeah. I like to say we're building an S&P 2.0 on Hyperliquid. So the idea is a ticker factory that mints buy buttons as soon as, ideas for a trade emerge or new asset classes are formed. Um, if I really think about how S&P or MSCI function in TradFi, they serve this role of defining, the standard that the market operates on. And I really think that we want to position Paragon for serving that same role in the asset creation process. For a world where you've got news happening around the clock, right? Market cap moving, events happening over the weekend. We have things like compute emerging where the unit economics are, uh, kind of being figured out in real time. And I think like basically, yeah, a ticker factory, right? An engine that can have its finger on the pulse of what consensus is almost as soon as attention is forming around it. That's what we're aiming to build on top of Hyperliquid.
Yeah, man. So there's been some recent pushback about the dominance of Trade XYZ and preferential treatment towards Trade XYZ as the dominant HIP3 deployer. When it comes to Paragon's stance and just kind of thinking about what the traction has looked like, how do you kind of think about the positioning of Paragon when it comes to Trade XYZ, and how do you think about this kind of dominance that Trade XYZ has had in the deployer space as it pertains to kind of the credible neutrality of the Hyperliquid ecosystem?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two questions in there, right? One is, how do we compete against a behemoth like trade? It definitely seems like a David versus Goliath story. On that front, I'd say, it's early. You'll see a lot more coming from us in short order with regards to the roster that we've assembled to really compete in the HIP3 deployer space. Um, and I think like as far as level playing fields go for turning the tide, what better battleground than crypto and blockchain native
Yeah.
systems. So as we know, stories change really really fast here, and we're our intention is for the conversation to quickly change from the Trade XYZ show to, hey, there's a new competitor in town. With regards to like preferential treatment, we don't believe that any of that is occurring, right? This is a permissionless network. It's not clear. Like you could see if there were any sort of structural or mechanical advantage that trade has, and um, you know, it's not apparent to me that there's any sort of insider information or ball going on. Um, yeah, I really think that's just like
Yeah.
perception, often, yeah, somewhat misinformed takes and just the rumor mill. I think like incumbents aren't a reason to avoid right markets. If anything, they're a sign that product market fit exists. And and really, what it says to me is we have to step up the caliber of competition in
Yeah.
order to compete in this deployer landscape.
Yeah, and what's your thoughts on the strategy there as far as like, is it the quality of pairs? Is it the number of pairs? Is it more esoteric markets? Is it being quick? What do you think is kind of the defining factors that make a super quality HIP3 deployer? What are those factors? And then how does Paragon think about excelling in some of these?
Yeah, I think liquidity is a big piece of it, right? Giving traders the confidence to move with size on these markets, and that's something we've spent a lot of time on in the last few weeks. Shoring up that piece of the puzzle. I think the other thing is curation, right? It's kind of what
Mm,
you mentioned there, and I think curation in terms of reactivity, right? You almost want to be so reactive that you have this perception of being proactive, and yeah, listing folks that or listing tickers that folks want, right? I think that if we look at the success of perp exchanges and centralized exchanges in the past, right? Hyperliquid did an excellent job on their curation strategy. Binance,
mm.
did an excellent job during the meme coin season on their curation strategy as well. So um, I really think, yeah, liquidity and distribution or liquidity and curation are kind of the first pieces of the puzzle to being a good HIP3 deployer.
And what are the most liquid markets that Paragon has currently as far as HIP3 goes for? Like, what are the most liquid markets that you guys currently have traded, and what does that volume look like?
Yeah, so we've currently traded about 135 million to date. Again, this has all been done with a very quiet rollout and little marketing. Um, our first three indices were very much a proof of concept. We wanted to show that something could be done, net new on HIP3, other than listing a redundant, Tesla or Nvidia perp. So what we did is we made Bitcoin dominance total two and others, which are
Yep.
commonly tracked crypto indices, actionable on Hyperliquid today. Um, I think again, along the lines of curation, it's pretty clear that even crypto native traders are thinking a lot about things like the AI trades, um, you know, uh, asset classes beyond
Yep.
tokens. Um, so yeah, I'd say like going forward, our curation and asset listing strategy will definitely be multi, cross asset, and that was really always the plan.
And then, so from the perspective of Paragon's business model, is this thing just really get as much volume on these pairs as possible, and really just try to scale the amount of users trading these pairs? And on the kind of like the specific types of trades, I mean, you're looking at Bitcoin dominance, others market cap, et cetera. So it's kind of these more like, I don't know. I think of these as like trading view pairs almost. Like these are the pairs that I see on trading view only, but no one trades there's not like that many liquid perps markets for these types of more like, I don't even know what they are. They're indices kind of, but they're almost like derivatives of indexes in the market. Talk to us about what the vision and business model is for Paragon, and kind of how you plan to scale the business, scale the volume, what that translates into on the business side of things.
Yeah, yeah. So we started with crypto native indices. We're definitely keen on branching to, other assets. I think, yeah, the primary means of monetizing is the maker and taker fees generated from the volume on our pairs, right?
Yep.
So first and foremost, we want to kind of prove that we can be a good HIP3 deployer, and what that means is listing assets that folks are keen on trading, right? The moment that they matter, the moment that they become relevant. Um, I think that question is somewhat asset agnostic, right?
Mm.
A lot of the activity so far has been on the single name equity side. Um, that's really like our first uh, plan, right? When re-entering the market here is making sure that we're like satisfying that need, right? Which is, hey, this trade is becoming front of mind right now. How do we make it actionable for anyone who has access to hyperliquid, right? Anywhere
Yeah.
where hyperliquid lives. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think that there's going to be a explosion of pairs listed from different types of equities across the globe, commodities. Obviously, there's been these like multiple evolutions of hyperliquid. I think really it caught a lot of mainstream attention off the Iran oil kind of shenanigans that was happening. And then now we've just seen like pre-IPO, Korean equities, AI stocks being traded. It's kind of funny, like no matter what the hot trade is of that, month or quarter, Hyperliquid's been able to just kind of manage that and be in front of it, right? And like always have that pair available through one of the deployers. And I think there's like a really unique edge in that of like, you know, the amount of assets, like once the assets get listed, they're going to be listed until they're, delisted for whatever reason from each deployer. But it's almost like there's like this never ending catalyst for Hyperliquid that's like any event in the world, any geopolitical volatility, any new hot AI trade, any new IPO, like these are all like turning out to be catalysts for Hyperliquid, which is very interesting.
Yeah, and there will never really be a shortage, right? There will
That's what I
always,
mean. Yeah.
yeah, there's always going to be a next trade. And I think you nailed exactly right, like the problem that exists in the traditional infrastructure stack that we think HIP3 and Paragon as a whole directly solves, and it's this idea of how do I compress the asset creation process, right?
Mm.
Um, so that if a trade or something like compute, for instance, becomes front of mind and consensus, like how can I express a direct view on that, right? And again, S&P and MSCI have been doing this for some time, right? They take an idea, whether it's the market as a whole or quantum computing, and they boil it down into an index, right, with a very defined methodology. Uh, but what they have to do is partner with the State Streets and the Vanguards of the world to make that
Yep.
real, right? And do an ETF for our future. What's awesome is with HIP3, you're all parts of that process, right? In one envelope. So as soon as it becomes relevant, you can define it and you can turn around and make that instrument real on Hyperliquid, right? And actionable for traders today. And I think what we're really doing is you're arming traders and investors, right, with a totally basically a real time toolkit, right, for
Sure.
markets.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like the tokenization megatrend directly correlates to the perps megatrend. And these are two things that we've been very vocal about. And they go very much hand in hand while they're different in the sense that tokenizing assets is typically thought of in the spot sense. The perpetual version of tokenized assets is kind of on the far side of the spectrum in terms of the investor rights and ownership compared to like a tokenized spot equity on chain with really good one-to-one direct backed ownership in a brokerage account that's KYC'd held by the issuer. But these two things are coming together and they're completely shifting the way people are thinking about like what we're doing on chain. Like we were just trading perps of crypto assets. Now we're trading perps on everything. We were just doing DeFi, yield farming and yield strategies with crypto assets. Now we're going to be doing it with vaults on any asset and with more complex strategy, perps to hedge things, to long things, to trade 24/7. This concoction of tokenized assets and perps coming together is like drastically changing the scope of the TAM of Hyperliquid and of the entire industry as a whole. In this bear market, it's just hard to be bearish. It's just hard to be bearish when you start to think about the type of volume that Hyperliquid's going to trade, the amount of OI that's going to be available, the amount of revenue that's not necessarily correlated to the crypto asset prices. Like we've seen Hyperliquid revenue stay somewhat steady, even though like the amount of perps volume and perps interest, I think, in trading coins is like far, far less than what it would be in a peak bull. And so that, I think, like is the remaining bull thesis, is like the expansion of tokenized asset trading on perps on Hyperliquid, and then just the revival of the crypto market. You know, you could easily see daily volumes on Hyperliquid right now, 3 to 4x, OI to 5x. You know, in peak conditions, like I think $50 billion OI is a really reasonable target in the next bull run. And I think I think we can get to like $10 billion a day in volume.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's interesting, like the dichotomy that exists, right, between, what's going on over in Hyperliquid land in the world of tokenized assets and kind of what you see on the timeline. And
Yeah.
I guess, the silver lining there is it makes your job as a retail investor or a fundamental liquid investor easy when there are few projects of such high quality, right, and such dispersion there. And I think if I'm seeing this in real time, it allows me to build conviction in what Hyperliquid is doing.
Yep.
I think yeah, I think what's really interesting on what you had noted there is we're also, for the first time, starting to experiment with the status quo of perp dynamics, right? For a lot of the use cases that you're describing. For instance, like things like funding rates
Mm.
and like the open interest caps moving, kind of iteratively over time.
Yep.
These things can be like modified for use cases like pre-IPO perps, right? Um, and perhaps like other asset classes. So
Yep.
it's really interesting to see like what the unlocks will kind of be. As this as the tokenization trend also like starts to proliferate. So for
Yeah.
instance, like the idea of doing a carry trade, right, on on a stock. Super interesting. I'm sure there's going to be like a whole slew of shops that emerge running like strategies that are exactly that. So yeah, extremely bullish. I don't really know where else I'd be spending my time as a builder in crypto other than Hyperliquid and kind of this front of where crypto meets the real world.
Yeah, man. Yeah, totally agree from our perspective as well. So, Todd, just kind of closing out here. What is the plans for Paragon in Q3, Q4? What do you guys have lined up for the rest of the year?
Yeah, we've got some big things coming. You'll see some announcements from us in short order. Again, along this lines of creating a ticker factory that we think can keep up with the speed with which ideas and narratives are evolving in real time. Um, Outside of that, we plan to be big contributors to the open source um, development that is occurring on Hyperliquid. So yeah, you'll see a lot from us on the HIP 3 front. As HIP 4 becomes more and more of a story, we'll have our eyes on that as well. Um, yeah.
Love it. Todd, thanks for joining us. Congrats on the success. $135 million traded on Paragon, $1 billion soon. Look forward to the growth of Hyperliquid in the coming months. I think we're going to get a really nice summer move into the next start of the bull market. So we're just hanging on tight here and staying patient. So thanks for your time, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right,
Cheers.
buddy.
Bye.
Cheers, man.